Hey everybody, welcome back to the Silver Silk and More channel. I am so excited about today's project. I've got a pair of very fringy earrings. And let's be real here, who doesn't love a fringe moment? Now, this technique that we're going to learn today is bead weaving, and sometimes that can be a very scary word for people that are either new to jewelry making or just really haven't even given it a chance to do any bead weaving. But don't worry, I'm going to take you through all the steps one at a time until we finish the earring. I promise it's not that scary, and you are going to walk away learning something completely new and inspiring. I promise you that. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We are going to make these beautiful earrings, which, by the way, were designed by Danielle Wicks, and I am just in love with them. If you, by the way, are enjoying this content and want to see more, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button for the channel. But until that, we are going to go ahead and just pen down to our tools because we've got quite a bit to cover, and I want to get right into it. So we have got our chain nose pliers, which look like this. These are Weber's brand and are excellent quality. They're very affordable too, and I just genuinely enjoy using them. They're very ergonomic. They've got great strong handles, and I really love how tapered the tip of the pliers are. We've got a pair of cutters, which look like this. These are Lindstrom brand. I've had these forever. They've cut some wild things in my beading experience, but they have lasted all this time and still remain sharp. So I highly recommend them. They are not cheap, by the way. They can run up to $60 per plier. But again, if I've got a 10-year investment in it, that's a pretty good deal in the exchange of it all. We've got some crimp pliers, which look like this. These are Zoran brand. Now, I know I'm using all different brand tools here, but I kind of just have weeded out and picked out my favorite things to use. And I'm passing that knowledge on to you guys because jewelry making should be easy, and leave it to me and some of the other industry experts to have done the trial and error for you to give you guys the best tools that we can and the ones that I know are going to be the most bang for your buck, right? But the Zoran crimpers are no exception to being amazing tools. They are just well made. They have 3 different crimp settings, and then they've got that V notch like toward the inner part of the plier there. The tip is amazing too because it's super tapered, and they can actually work as a second chain nose plier pair. So I really love having these around. And as optional things, we've got our Loctite glue, which I've got on the side if I need it. And then I don't really have a thread burner, but if you do have one, you can absolutely use that instead of the Loctite. The other thing is the beading needles. I didn't get to talk about those. I've got some tulip beading needles. Obviously, mine are in use right now, so they're not inside of this tube. But these are exceptional. They have a gold tip where you thread your beading thread through, and they're really sharp. They're really strong. They're not going to bend easily. And I think for a project like this, because fringe, you sort of have to weave back through with your thread. And so you're wanting to use a very stiff and very like pointed needle, if you will, just so you can get back through those beads pretty easily. So yeah, I recommend the tulip beading needles. Love them. Have them on side. And then the other thing that I don't think we got to talk about was the thread, which is actually mentioned at the end of this list, but I'm going to go ahead and just share it with you since I consider it more to be a tool, in fact. Today, I'm using the Miyuki beading thread in a brown color to match the pipe chain color that I'm using. The thread, beading thread, comes in a ton of different colors. So you can always kind of experiment and see what's going to match up to whatever SilverSilk chain you want to use, or you can always revert to Fireline or Wildfire if you want to from Beadalon. Those are also great options. In this case, because we were trying to match it very closely to the beading to the SilverSilk, it was just a good way to go for the Miyuki thread. So there it is. That's the label if you're looking for an exact match. All right, let's get into the actual materials that we're going to use today. I've got some bronzite pipe chain. This is spectacular silver silk. It is a 3 millimeter chain that has a hollow center. The tubing that runs through it is made out of silicone. So, just kind of preface with if you've got a rubber or latex or silicone allergy, this probably isn't the stuff to craft with. But I know that the tubing is used all over the jewelry making world, and I've just decided to take it and knit over it. And this particular color called bronzite has a antique bronze, antique copper color wire that's been knitted over it, giving it an amazing texture. It is one of the 7 different silver silk chains that I carry in the store. Now you'll see that it says 8 inches of the chain. That's for both earrings. Since I'm just going to make the one today, we're basically just halving all the materials. So for each side, you'll need about 4 inches, give or take. Depends how big you want your hoop form to be, because that's what we're using the pipe chain for today. In this case, it's going to make a hoop that is this big. And if that is too big of an earring, you can always cut it down and make it smaller. That is totally up to your design preference. So have some pipe chain out. Along with that, you'll need a couple end caps for each. I went ahead and said 4 for both earrings. And this is the antique brass. Excuse me, I keep saying antique brass, antique copper color. Now, my findings are very special because it has a brass interior base metal that's been coated 5 different times with plating. And you get this sort of non tarnish, very well made finding at the end of the day. And this is all silver silk findings. And you'll know that it's silver silk because of the SS imprint that's on my findings. And so you'll know that the same technology has been used across the board for those 5 layers of plating and high quality finish. And it also comes in 6 different colors. So you could really match up whatever tone, whatever mood you're trying to make with your design. In this case, we are sticking with the antique copper. All right, crimp tubes. I've got some out here from Softflex Company. These are the 2 millimeter crimps. And then I've also got some beading wire in medium size. I'm using champagne today, but you guys can use virtually any color. It's going to be inside of the actual pipe chain. And so you won't even really see it. And if you've got scraps laying around of medium-sized beading wire, again, this is Softflex beading wire. I highly recommend just using it up here. You'll need about, give or take, 8 inches per each side, maybe even less, just depending on how small like you want to make your earring. In this case, I've just got a little scrap out that I'm going to work with. Okay, seed beads. Let's talk seed beads. I'm going to get these things moved up here for just a second. And we got quite a few seed bead colors to kind of go through. So you'll need about 4 grams of each of these. And here I've got metallic bronze, which looks like this. It is very pretty, very shiny. Just adds another metallic tone to this design. We've got raspberry. This is actually a silver lined raspberry. It's so pretty as well. It gives a nice pop of plum. Raspberry it's a darker red color. It's beautiful though. You could even say magenta. It's kind of a all-encompassing color of all those things. And then we've got tea rose, which looks like this. It's a beautiful peach color. And then limestone. Now, if you're looking for the particular, like the exact match of the seed beads, because these are Miyoki seed beads, you will need to check out the video description for a comprehensive list of materials. You can also go to silversilkonline.com and check out the education videos and, well, specifically, I guess, the tutorials. It's on the top side of the menu, and you can definitely just click in and see all the different, first of all the different library of classes that I offer, which is quite a bit of inspiration and ideas, but you can also get a very comprehensive list of all the materials that I've used. And so if you're wanting to make an exact replica of today's project, you can absolutely do that. All right. And these are all size 8 seed beads, by the way. The only size 8 seed bead that we're not going to use is the size 15 in a metallic bronze as well. Now, this is a very tiny size bead. Let me show you. Okay. Can be a little intimidating, especially for new beginning bead weavers. But if you are not really able to use these because of some reason, for me, they're actually just too small. But I do love seed beads and I do miss using tiny seed beads before my vision got a little blurry over time. So really, it's just more or less because I can't see them. But you can always switch to a size up. So if you're wanting to use a size 11 seed bead, you can absolutely do that. Feel free to alter any of this pattern once you get the technique down, which is the brick stitch and the fringe. You guys can just have at it however you want to with the amount of alteration and material mixing that you want to do. I know that we all collect beads and probably even seed beads. Might not always use them, and that's okay. But this will give you a pretty good idea of the materials required for this until you're able to branch out. So that is my seed bead spiel. And then we've got the fire polish beads, which are right here. These are absolutely stunning. They go along with the raspberry color, and so it's just a perfect match. All right, let us get started with our step number one. I'm going to grab that pipe chain that I showed you guys earlier, and I went ahead and cut it to the size of the hoop that I want to make. So I'm just going to grab a couple end caps. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my beading wire, and I'm just going to pass my beading wire through the pipe chain quite easily. You can actually go up to size 18 gauge wire if you're using craft wire. That's how versatile this stuff is. And it's perfect for making a form. So you see right there, I just went ahead and strung it right through. Now at this point, you can add on the bead caps. These are custom made for pipe chain. So it's an exact fit. And I'm also going to go ahead and string on a crimp, and I'm going to cross the wires into it. So at this point, as I tighten it, you can see that the pipe chain kind of is starting to fit into the caps. I'm just going to give it a nice, like, lovable squeeze there to get it into position. At this point, you can apply a bit of Loctite glue right underneath the end cap if you really want to. That just makes it kind of stay in position a little bit better. Not really required or anything like that, but I will say that it can help you if you are struggling with keeping that end cap on. I think I got mine to fit pretty easily, so I'm just gonna not do that. But you can if you need to, of course. All right, the next step is to crimp our 2 millimeter crimp. So I'm just gonna grab my Zeron crimpers. I'm gonna go into that middle notch first. You might actually have to kind of put it directly in a space or in a position where you can grasp that crimp pretty easily. It looks like if I hold it like this, where it's just pointing straight out, both the component and my pliers, then it's just easy to get to. And then just give this one last squeeze just to make sure everything is nice and aligned correctly. And didn't quite have it in there. There we go. I'm just going to press it down, and you'll get this sort of crescent shape that happens with the crimp. What that does is it sort of separates those two wires into different compartments. And then you just go into your crimp, pliers again, hit up that second notch within your pliers for the 2 millimeter size, and press down. And the crimp folds in on itself. And that's how you know that it's going to be perfectly strong. You can take these extra ends and tuck them into the pipe chain if you want to, or you could cut it off there. That's totally up to you guys. I'm just going to cut it off right there. Okay. Not bad, not bad. We don't have anything sticking out, which is great. And we've got our hoop form. So we can move on to the next part of our lesson, which is the actual bead weaving part. Now, The hardest part about bead weaving isn't stitching beads together necessarily. It is the idea of getting that needle and thread on efficiently. Most of you guys know what I'm talking about because sometimes that little tiny little hole within the needle can be super intimidating. There are different needles out there, by the way. Beadalon has a needle that is completely split down the middle so that you just open up the needle, put in your thread, and you're ready to go. It doesn't have the most well, I would say it's the most flexible needle. It's not going to be a stiff needle like this one is for the fringe, but if that's easier to thread with, and if that's the only barrier that's holding you back from bead weaving, then by all means, I say just try it out and see. All right, I'm going to roll my thread between my index and thumb. I'm going to place the needle directly over my thread and then just push forward with both my fingers. And if you're lucky, you will have your needle threaded. This is also where you need 120 inches, which kind of equates to about 10 feet, which seems like a lot, I know. You can, if you're really not wanting to work with that much, you can absolutely cut it in half, work with 5 feet at a time, and then just continue to add on thread if you want to, or if you're just wanting to have like a seamless piece throughout the entire bead weaving process of your design, then I think having a little more thread than is necessary is always going to make sure and it'll ensure that you have all of the thread that you need for the project. All right, so we're gonna leave about a 7-inch tail. So let me see here. It's about yay much, not too much, but between 5 and 7 inches is pretty good. And I am just gonna kind of eyeball where the fringe is gonna be, starting probably about right here. I would say if you go in an inch and a half down from where your cap is to the beginning part of where the fringe needs to be, that's going to be the best spot to create your brick stitch. And so just give yourself a double knot there. And you can already see that the thread is kind of just disappearing into the pipe chain, which is exactly what you want. So I'm going to give that a good tug, and that's what it should look like. All right. And all right, we are ready for our brick stitching. So I'm just going to flip this whole thing around. That way I am ready to get myself started. And I'm going to grab 2 seed beads. Let me grab my little tray here. Brick stitch, whenever you're stitching over a form, you're going to have to start with 2 beads at a time, and then you'll simply move to the one. But once you string those 2 beads on, I'm just going to hold them together and then go under the pipe chain and then up through that second bead. So these 2 beads are now going to be basically right next to each other by the time that I pull up my thread. Okay, just like that. Now let's do that again. This time I won't be picking up 2 beads, I'll just need 1 bead. Okay, we'll go behind, up through the hoop, and we'll flip this bead so that it's sort of sitting up. We want to make sure that that bridge is created with the thread. So let me show you. Looks like that. We'll go up through that bead again and pull tight. You'll notice that these will start to stack directly onto your form. It goes by very quickly, I will say that. So you can just kind of stack all these together. And the idea here is to get 16. I will say the more you start to stitch on, the less you'll be able to sort of position where these need to be. But I think the measurements that were given to you should be a pretty good indication of where stuff needs to kind of sit in order to in order to look symmetrical. Okay, and up through. So that is the beginning form of the brick stitch. And you'll also notice that this will start to curve along your form. And so you don't really have to worry too much about it being a straight line or anything. It'll conform to your hoop size and the measurement and that curvature around that bottom part. So I went ahead and prepared a sample ahead of time, which looks like this. This is all of the 16 beads that have been stitched in place. Actually, it should be this direction since that's the way that we stitched it. Okay, and you can see that my last one is pretty loose, so I'm just going to tighten that back up. So at this point, what I'm going to do is, because I'm also right-handed, I'm just going to flip this entire form right around so that my stitching will begin back over on the right-hand side. And I'm going to now move on to the next step. And so this is our 16 beads, which is creating our second row. So we're going to actually do the same thing as before. We're going to pick up 2 seed beads, and this time we're going to go up through that thread bridge that we had from the beginning, which that just means that that is that thread between the 2 beads at the top. Okay, there you go. Up close and personal with the beads. Once you do that, just kind of stack these guys next together and then just go up through the bead that you last had on, and boom. Easy peasy. Let's do that again. And this time I'll only need 1 bead because that is the space that I've got next. Okay, here we go. Between the 2 beads. It'll automatically kind of just sit next to the bead that I've already stitched. And then you just go up through it and pull it up. Let's do that a couple more times. Okay, there's one. So you can see it goes by really fast. This is going to ultimately set us up for our fringe here in a moment. Now, I will say you can only get up to a couple rows before you're not really going to be able to add on much more beads unless it's to expand that curve, because it'll not have the correct math configuration to go all the way around like it has on this, anywhere beyond 2 rows. But you can certainly get the amount of seed beads that you need to on there. So you'll just do this all the way around and you'll meet up there at that last bridge. The last bridge requires 2 seed beads to create the last part of it. So here's what we did. We went up through the first part of it with the 2 seed beads, and then we continued to stitch it together. So I went ahead and prepared a sample that finishes out all of the stitching. And at the very end, I had sort of commented that you'll basically go twice on that last bridge. And here I've got that extra bead. And this will create a total of 18 rows. Okay, so there are 2 beads in that thread bridge right between that last set. And now I've got this amazing form where I can start to add on my fringe. And this is where you can break out all of your other seed beads. So I went ahead and illustrated this pattern for you of the configuration of those beads in the color order. So here it is. We've got a size 15 bead between each bead, first of all. And then second is that we've got this repeating pattern of 4 T rows, 3 raspberry, 2 limestone, and then the same pattern in reverse. We've got 3 raspberry, 4 tea light, or rose tea, excuse me, And then we've just ended with the two antique bronze color, followed by our little crystal, our fire polish crystal there at the end. Just a nice way to kind of end out the fringe. So now what we do is we just kind of pull all this stuff up together. We're going to take our needle and we're going to go through all the beads except for that last bead there at the end. So let's flash over to this image so that we're on the same step. And you basically just can go straight through the beads if they're already kind of strung together or pulled together, I guess I should say. Okay. Again, this is where having a very stiff needle is easy. It's easier to work with than a flexible needle. Okay. So I went ahead and made it through to the end, as you can see there. And the idea here is that you're going to have to keep the tail thread out of the way as best as you can. We're going to go up through that last size 8 seed bead, and we're going to sort of pull everything tight. Now I've got this gap in my thread, but I'm going to work it out. I'm just going to pull at that last bead, the size 15 bead, and then just kind of pull this together. And you'll see that it kind of just snaps in place, which is amazing. And then to get the next fringe, we're simply just going to go into the bead next to the one that I have a fringe on. And again, apologies at this extra tail thread. Really, you could probably just stitch this back into the work at this point. I'm going to do that at the very end. But now you can see that I'm just going to go through that bead right next to it. So this will help me to create my next fringe and get started with that. So here's an image of what I just did. Okay, so again, we went up through that size 8 and down through the next one over, and we are ready to fringe it out again. So what it is when it is all put together, it looks like this. Ooh, now this is going to be real fun to wear. I can already tell. So much fringe fun that's happening. And I'm at the very last one here, in fact. Okay, so and I went ahead and strung all these beads on so you guys wouldn't have to watch me do it during all of this. But same process here. I'm just going to actually go up through all my beads, and then finally we're at the end where we just secure our thread. Okay, so let's go through all the beads. I would say the most time-consuming part of this is probably um, getting the order of the pattern right, which is also the fun part, to be honest, because then you can take it to a whole meditative level, and you could either lay these out ahead of time, or you can, have your bead palette out and string on each on your needle one at a time. It's really just up to you and your necessity for instant gratification. In this case, it's kind of nice to have all these step outs finished so that I could show you guys in the most cohesive way. Okay, same thing again. We went back up through our fringe. I'm just going to tighten it by pulling on the thread. And now at this point, what I'm going to do is go up through that size 8. Just like that. I know it's a little bit hard to see, but I'll do my best to close up. And I'm going to pull it. And I'm going to actually go between that thread bridge that's of that first row. And what happens is it'll create a small loop, and I'm just going to actually take my needle and just loop it through the small loop that I've made. And I'm going to do that a couple times. The reason for this is it creates a miniature little knot that will eventually disappear once we stitch our thread back into our beadwork here, but it'll just keep it extra secure. And what you do with that extra thread is you just kind of weave it back and forth into your brick stitch. I usually like to go about a half inch to an inch into the beadwork. You can always pull it through one of the fringe, and that's an easy thing to do before trimming it. So in fact, let's go ahead and just do that while we're here. Okay, I'm just going to pull it a little bit through and come in with my cutters and go ahead and trim that off. And I went ahead and did the same thing to the other side here so that all of my tail and everything is tucked in. So at this point, I can go ahead and add on my earring wires, which I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but you need 2 earring wires. For earrings, I figured that was probably a given. And then you just kind of slip that on as such. Oops, didn't have this up. There we go. And these are ready to wear. Now, what you can do is embellish this even more. You could add a jump ring here to the top of the earring, simply probably just by connecting it to this extra hoop area that we've got in the earring wire. Connect a jump ring, and then you can have some beads that are sort of bobbling below into the middle of the hoop, which I think would make a phenomenal addition to the design. Or you can just leave it plain and fringy like this, and it's still beautiful. But that sort of concludes the tutorial for these earrings. It takes a lot longer. We've only spent 30 minutes together, but I will say because I've had these sort of step outs ready for you guys, just makes the whole project kind of come together cohesively. And nobody wants to sit there and see me string everything, probably. But this is for you guys. This is a technique that I hope you will try and master. And I know you probably have a ton of seed beads maybe in your hoarding that you want to use up. And this is the perfect way to do it. You don't have to stop at the earrings. You can always do this to a necklace application if you want to. I don't know, or even a bracelet probably if you do smaller fringe. Might be kind of fun. Lots of different ways to experiment. Now, as a reminder, if you enjoyed this video and the content that I have on the channel, please share it with a friend within your creative community. Please destroy that like button and subscribe to the channel. All those things are important for the health and well-being of SilverSilk and more on YouTube. And you can also follow me on Instagram, where I'm posting more inspiration constantly. I want to give a special shout out to Danielle Wicks for providing this project for us today. Otherwise, you guys can just join us over in the SilverSilk Silkies Facebook group. I love this little community of crafty individuals that enjoy using SilverSilk. Not only do the tutorials inspire them, but they in turn inspire me and make me feel all the feels, first of all, and come up with new, fun, brilliant ideas that we can always do with SilverSilk and share the SilverSilk love with everyone out there. So I just want to say again, thank you for joining in this video, and I will see you guys at the next tutorial. Mwah. Love you. Bye.